Menelaus sums up most of the Odyssey in a single line of dialogue. Let's check it out. Hello and welcome back. My name is Zachary May, and today we are reading through the great books of Western civilization, continuing with the Odyssey. This is book 15 from the Robert Fagles translation. As always, I'll begin with a brief synopsis before getting into analysis and commentary. Athena flies to Sparta and finds Telemachus wide awake. She tells him that it's time for him to go home, reminding him that the suitors continue to devour his wealth, and may do worse while he is away. She warns him of the division of the suitors that lie in wait for him to ambush him on his way home, and how to avoid them. Lastly, she instructs him to go to the dwelling of Eumaeus, the swineherd, once he arrives at Ithaca. Telemachus rises at once, and he and Pisistratus take their leave of Menelaus as soon as they are able, though not before a princely send-off with gifts and a feast. As they approach Pylos, the home of Nestor, Pisistratus' father, Telemachus asks that he be dropped off at his ship, instead of being brought to the palace. He is afraid that Nestor will insist on hosting him for another stretch of time, when he is in fact very anxious to leave. Pisistratus does as he is told, and brings him straight to his ship. Just as Telemachus is about to embark, Theoclymenus, a prophet, approaches and asks him for safe passage to wherever he is going. He had killed somebody in Argos, and now the family members of the dead man are after him. Telemachus takes him aboard. Off they sail, and Telemachus swings clear of the ambush site, as instructed. Meanwhile, the beggar is still staying in Eumaeus' hut. He tests the man's hospitality by suggesting that today he will go and beg hospitality or a crust of bread from the suitors, maybe hire himself out for work. Eumaeus tells him that this is a fool's errand, and that it would be much better to wait for Telemachus to return home and see what gifts he will give instead. While they wait, the beggar asks, what about Odysseus' father, his mother, and what about Eumaeus himself? How are they all doing, and how did Eumaeus come to be a slave in Ithaca? Eumaeus tells all. Laertes, the father of Odysseus, is alive, though old with grief before his time for his late wife. His wife, Odysseus' mother, died of grief for her lost son. He stays in the field among the slaves now, hardly eating or taking care of himself. Penelope used to be seen quite a bit in the palace, though is not anymore. As for Eumaeus himself, he was the son of a lord of an island far away, but he was kidnapped by Phoenician pirates and bought by Laertes. However, the queen brought him up like her own son until he was of age. The beggar, after hearing this, points out both the sorrow of Eumaeus' tale as well as the good that came out of it all in the end. Telemachus arrives on Ithaca. He sends his shipmates to go into town, while he himself is first dropped off close to the swineherd's hut. The fugitive prophet asks him where he should go, and Telemachus suggests that he go with one of his crewmates to be taken care of for the time being, until Telemachus has a better chance to host him. Telemachus himself goes to see the swineherd, as he was asked to by Athena. Bernard Knox points out to us in his introduction that the vision of Athena before Telemachus is very strange, at least by Homer's standards. She doesn't come in a dream because he's already awake, and yet he's not truthfully seeing her with his eyes either, for he doesn't respond or react to her presence as literally everybody would when a god actually appears physically before them. She seems to be almost whispering into his mind, directly. It's odd as Homeric visions go. In any case, Knox comments that she enhances the fears and suspicions that are already in his mind, such as those regarding his mother and the possibility of her giving in to one of the suitors. But importantly, I think, she also gives him information that he does not already know, namely how to avoid the suitor's trap. Again, Homeric encounters with the gods usually don't occur this way, but as religious experiences go, this is much closer to the norm. Take Christianity, for example. Even amongst the saints, presumably the holiest people that have lived, the number of those who have had face-to-face encounters with angels or with God himself is remarkably small. Most of the time, what guidance they receive or answers to their prayers they have comes more like this. And that goes for your everyday believers as well. It's a small piece of the supernatural side of this epic that we can probably more easily relate to. I'd never detain you here too long, Telemachus. Not if your heart is set on going home. I'd find fault with another host, I'm sure, too warm to his guests, too pressing, or too cold. Balance is best in all things. It's bad either way, spurring the stranger home who wants to linger, holding the one who longs to leave. You know, Welcome the coming, speed the parting guest. In these lines lie most of the meaning of the Odyssey. They speak of how to be a good host, how to be a bad one, and to seek balance and moderation in all things. Notice that being good at hospitality inherently requires balance. You can't give too little or too much. You shouldn't keep your guests when they want to leave, as Calypso did to Odysseus, and as Nestor would have done to Telemachus. You can't force them out when they want to stay, or give them bad things when they come upon you and ask for help. We see various beings, whether they be monsters, gods, goddesses, or people, succeed or fail at this task to be a good host throughout the Odyssey. So, if the entire Odyssey involves hospitality, and hospitality requires moderation, then the Odyssey is really about moderation. Hospitality just serves as a tool for teaching it, but it appears in plenty of other contexts in the epic too. It may even be seen to be present in the forward-thinking notion of suffering, which Odysseus himself reiterates for us close to the end of the chapter when speaking with Eumaeus. This is when Eumaeus shares the story of his youth with Odysseus. He was the son of a lord on an island until his wet nurse conspired with a pirate to kidnap and sell him. Laertes, Odysseus' father, ended up being the buyer. But Laertes raised Eumaeus in his own home with kindness, alongside Odysseus' siblings. At the conclusion of the story, Odysseus, still disguised as the beggar, says this: "Such pain, such sorrow, true. But look at the good fortune Zeus sends you, hand in hand with the bad. After all your toil, you reach the house of a decent, kindly man, who gives you all you need in meat and drink. He's seen to that, I'd say. It's a fine life you lead." That attitude, that approach to life, is also imbued with moderation. No misfortune should be considered final, nor any fortune either. A god may wreck you on the wine-dark sea, but you should bear it and wait for the winds to change. There may be more good headed your way further down the line. You may even arrive on Ithaca at last, but you should remain wary in case the situation in your house isn't what you're expecting. Living with moderation requires you to always be ready for change. What's good at one time may cause or bring some bad later on. What's bad at one time may not always be here, or may bring some unforeseen good. Either way, you recognize, as Odysseus does, your limitations, and you don't presume to see what your present fortune or misfortune will or will not bear in the future. If you're not living with moderation, not receptive to potential change, you are, in fact, dead. Life involves change constantly. But look at the shades of the dead in Book 11. Achilles chooses to die with his eternal glory, to try to make a good thing last forever and not change. But doing so costs him his life. Notice also that what he misses is the chance to be alive, to have that potential for change, even if he's a slave. Case in point for this one is Eumaeus' life, for as Odysseus tells him, becoming a slave doesn't have to be the end of all good in your life. Or think of Agamemnon, who thought that there was no chance whatsoever that the good things that he had possessed before could have gone away or changed at all, and he walked right into a trap. And then there's Ajax, who chose to be so committed in his shame at losing a contest to Odysseus that he chose to die in that shame. So much so that he's not even willing to approach Odysseus in death to make amends. He wanted to go to the bad and stay in the bad, unwilling to believe that there could be some good down the line. In summary, living with moderation is one of the many life lessons in the Odyssey, one that we can and should adopt for our own lives. Living with moderation requires vigilance for the changes that may come upon us. But that's okay. Don't try to be too still, or you'll be dead. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, and comment down below and let me know what you think. Answer the question, do you agree with Homer here in the Odyssey? Is living with moderation in all things best? We'll see you next time.